Financial journalist Michael Lewis attributed Iceland's 2008 financial collapse as one of the single largest acts of madness in financial history. But was this accurate? Hala, what went wrong in Iceland and was it avoidable?
I don't know if what went wrong in Iceland is necessarily that different from what went wrong in the global financial crisis globally, but it was perhaps more extreme in a small country and a small economy with a small currency but a very big financial sector. Was it avoidable? Yes. What went wrong, in my opinion, was excessive risk-taking that was further fueled by excessive pay and bonus culture that sort of drove that risk-taking to levels that were probably never sustainable, at least not with a small currency as we had. We had sort of people of similar educational and social backgrounds of the same gender, more and less making decisions in a herd behavior-like fashion. But having said that this was wrong in Iceland, I also want to emphasize that we pretty much saw the same behaviors on Wall Street and the City of London. It just became more catastrophic for us as we had built a financial sector to somewhere in the range of 10 times the size of our economy over a very short period of time.
You actually co-founded an investment firm shortly before Iceland's collapse, but it actually survived. How was this?
Part of that is, of course, timing and the fact that we were not a bank, so we were driven by fee-driven income, and that was easier, but we had a great team. And, in my view, worked from a set of principles that were more sustainable. So our vision when we founded the company in 2007, partly to respond to what we didn't believe in anymore, and partly to respond to the fact that there's an enormous opportunity that most of the financial sector doesn't look at, namely the economic and potential and the business potential found in women who are not empowered as they should be, was to work from a different set of values. So our vision was to put more feminine values into finance. And that is not to say that masculine values are wrong, it's just saying that imbalance one way or the other is not as healthy as a good balance of values.
So talk me through the experience of surviving Iceland's financial meltdown.
It's hard to describe to people what happens. I mean, this is the largest casualty in economic history. And 3 of our major banks, they basically defaulted within the same week. And there were individual investors. Our stock exchange was almost abolished. The peaceful people of Iceland demonstrated in very visible and somewhat aggressive ways, at least for the general peace-loving Icelander. In essence, what happened is the social contract was broken because in a small society, the feeling was, whether that is true or not, that a few select, mostly men, got away with a lot of money during the boom years, and then everything came collapsing down, and it came at a huge cost to our country in more ways than can be measured by economic ways. Now, we've managed somewhat well to turn around from that, but I continue to have the concern that we fall back into the same patterns and perhaps are not doing enough to avoid having that same catastrophe happen again at the expense of the general public.
In fact, you've been called one of the women leading Iceland's financial rescue. What's the strategy behind this?
One of the most interesting things I was part of with a great group of people was to host a national assembly in Iceland with a representative sample of the ordinary people of Iceland, randomly selected out of the national register, to actually discuss what should be the vision of our countries, what values can we agree that we want to live with. And that led to actually the government using that process and that method to review the constitution and ask some of these challenging questions. In 2007, we didn't have many people who questioned what was going on. And now when we see some of the similar behavior patterns re-emerging as we are doing better, people are questioning it a lot more. That we cannot take out profit in our lifetime at the expense of future generations. And we've been doing that for quite a while in the system we've been living with in the world. And now we have climate change and migration issues and the threat of war and lots of global challenges that are pretty much told us that we've probably come to the end of being able to sustain systems that work on principles that are singularly focused on the short-term economic profit alone.
Finally, how does Iceland's economy and financial sector stand today, and how do you see it developing?
Well, we are in a bit of a challenging situation right now because the government is now soon going to own again about 70% of our financial sector, and we are going to lift capital controls soon. There's a plan to do that in the year to come. We've been living with capital controls since the collapse. So some would say that we've actually had an asset bubble again, because all of our institutional capital and all of our capital is being invested in a very small pool of assets. And no one knows, and I can't really try to explain what will happen when capital controls get lifted, but the plan looks rather credible. What I am hoping we will do regarding the financial sector is I hope we will have the courage to really take a hard look at how we should redesign it to work and not just rebuild it as we did after the collapse in the very way that it was before. Because I think continuing to do the same thing and hoping for a different outcome is the definition of insanity, and I think Einstein agrees on that one.